Hello, my name is Geogen, and welcome back to Armoured Warfare, or rather, a video about Armoured Warfare and its upcoming developments. Now, normally there would be a forum post saying news, patch variant, whatever it is, 013, which will be upcoming, and I'll probably do a video on that as well. But in their community highlight, part 9, normally they say, here are a bunch of community contributors or community members who have made a good video for this week or whatever, so go and check those out. But in this one, they have actually taken some questions and answers rather from the Russian English stream session, as it says down there. Here is a summary of what lead developer Richard Taylor has said to the viewers. So I'm going to go through what he said about the questions and then point out some of the most interesting responses. So it's quite a large block of text, so let's begin. The maps as well as vehicles have different statistics depending on region to region. Okay, very standard thing to say there. It's differences between EU and the Russian server and the American server. So some players on the Russian server may do better on Reactor compared to the EU server or something like that. It doesn't actually say. So that's a very minor point. But anyway, moving on. We have Obsidian introduced the current camouflage system, color and pattern combination to offer the players with much flexibility. That's kind of substandard. Kind of nice to have that variation. This isn't really that interesting though. Current camouflage system is only the first phase of visual customization. More features will come in the future. That is of interest. Probably more patterns, more base paints, perhaps more inscriptions and such like this. I don't actually know, it doesn't say. Battalions will factor in for some of the upcoming competitive modes. Battalions are basically like clan wars from World of Tanks. So it says here, the developers are working on a first competitive mode called Lords of War. It's not a fully fledged clan war-like mode yet, but battalions will be able to gain recognition if their members do well. This ladder type mode will be the first step, and more battalion level content will come in the future. A lot of players have joined battalions or clans, and they have realized that there isn't a huge amount in game at the moment. So with these changes of this upcoming mode, this will be of benefit to them. I myself don't play in a clan, and I'm not part of a clan in other games as well, so that'll be interesting. The mode is called Lords of War, and it says the basic concept is winning a series of matches after which you become king of the hill, and other teams will try and knock you down. The higher you get on the ladder, the better the reward. Doesn't say if this is over like a month period, or a year period, or half a year period, or if there are multiple instances of this. I imagine there would be, otherwise it would be a bit of a pain battling all year to get the reward. But at the same time, if they did it over 1 year, it would be a pretty significant reward. But I imagine it would be multiple events running every month or so. I don't know. But that's quite an interesting concept. It's kind of similar to that of World of Tanks' what's that called? The global map, where they control certain regions and you have to fight over different regions. But in this, you get you don't control regions. It would seem you control position. Your position 1, and you have to fight for that position if you retain control. It's kind of similar to like the kind of reminds me of what's it called, like ESL, like professional league matches like that, where they have a knockout system. But it's not the same, obviously, but it reminds me of that more so than World of Tanks' system. But they do both have similarities. Anyway, moving on. Replays should appear quite soon. Internally, the system is already developed. It will feature pause, slow motion, and fast forward functions. Good. For people like myself who make videos on Armoured Warfare, it is very nice to see that function being thought of and going to be released soon. Hopefully, it doesn't say when. But you guys can then send me your replays if you want, and we can feature some pretty good community games. Tier 10 tanks are already in development. One of the most important things for the developers was to make them as attractive, in brackets, badass, as possible. They will include the most modern version of the Leopard 2, 2A7, I think it says in Garage at the moment, Challenger 2 with certain experimental modules. So My problem with the Challenger 2 right now at tier 9 is its gun is not competitive versus the other tier 9s at the moment, but as you well know, they are thinking about changing the tier 9's balance, because currently it's not good. They will also be featuring the XM1A3, the next generation Abrams tank, of course. Right now it's the M1A2. 2 French vehicles, probably the Leclerc, I think. The T14 Armata and 1 Polish vehicle, which is the PL01, from what I remember. In total, there will be 8 tier 10 vehicles in the first round of updates. Developers are working on improvements of PvE. PvE is always taken into account when discussing new features. That is, very vague, but it's good to have them thinking about it. Mine laying abilities for AFVs, for example, are something the developers are not working on. It's potentially a player frustrating mechanism. Yes, it is. If they featured something where an AFV could lay a mine which you can't see, and then a main battle tank drives over said mine or any other vehicle, and you blow up, and well, not blow up instantly, hopefully, if they ever did implement that, but they're not going to. But you can imagine the frustration of playing the game, and they'll probably have players leaving or not playing high tier matches. It's something like World of Warships. They could have introduced submarines, but they said, no, we're not having submarines, because can you imagine playing your battleship and having yourself immediately knocked out because you can't see a submarine firing torpedoes from 9 kilometers away when they're undetected, well, not undetected, but invisible for your fire, because surface fire would not penetrate that far into the water and hit the target most of the time. So it's kind of similar to World of Warships in that respect. So good. I'm glad they take that into account, but it could have been interesting in some regards, but generally overall, it would be bad for the game. Personal missions will definitely appear in Armored Warfare. They will be both short-term and long-term. Can be completed within the space of one match, some of them, and longer multi-stage missions with larger rewards. Okay, that's kind of similar to World of Tanks. In fact, it is very similar, so that's nice to see. Getting extra credits, getting extra reputation, things like this, to help players progress through the game is always a nice idea. Hopefully they won't have any of those annoying requirements, such as kill 3 SPGs, or kill 3 particular tanks in a match which are 1 tier higher than you. Those missions are really frustrating. However, we shall see. It may be like the mission set in World of Tanks Console. World of Tanks Console has the ops. If you do play that, you'll know what I'm on about, but operations are where you can select up to 3 per battle missions, where it has like do 2,000 damage to an enemy vehicle or enemy vehicles, and you get 1.5 times credits for that match. That's quite good. But these multi-stage missions in World of Tanks, normal variant of World of Tanks on PC, I really dislike the whole, it's 1 tier higher, you have to get 3 kills of that tier. I know it's designed to get like a tier 9 or 10 vehicle in that game, and therefore it's going to be of interest for those players who are of a higher skill level than other players. But for the newer players who've gone through the earlier missions, they're just going to go, well, I can't complete it because I'm not good enough. And, you lock out a lot of your players now. But it's good to see that in development. Of course, like I said, for a lot of these, it's very vague. And all the possibilities I just mentioned could or could not happen. I don't know. I don't actually talk to the developers as such. I've not talked to Richard Taylor, obviously, because I'm very small on YouTube, and therefore, it's not in his interest. Moving on. Very early on, Armored Warfare was actually developed with 6 classes. It's news to me. The 6th one was self-propelled mortars, SPMs. And some of these vehicles were actually even modelled. SPMs would be like SPGs but short range. They'd have to move much closer to the front lines, but they would have a higher ballistic arc, allowing them to shoot over obstacles more easily. It's possible this class will appear once existing classes are properly balanced. what do you guys think of that? Having a SPM. So the tank would have to be much closer to the front line. It would therefore be much more exposed, but you wouldn't be as safe around buildings and cover. An example I can think of is the FV304, or the Bird, as certain YouTubers call it. That thing has a very short range, but it has a very high ballistic arc. So, could be potentially annoying, but at the same time, potentially balanced because it is much closer in regards to the battle that's going on. Richard Taylor agrees that the current matchmaking system is or needs to be replaced. The matchmaker in 2.0 in update 013 is brand new. It addresses the problems, the platoon matchmaking issues, where the situation would be that one team ends with high tier tank platoons while the other team has no high tier tank platoons. Platoons will be matched against one another, and in worst case the team will have high tier vehicles as well. Currently in Armoured Warfare there are a lot of tiers. There are a lot of players who are in tier 9 vehicles and they have platoons of 3. Whereas on the enemy team there aren't any. Best case scenario, there are 3 tier 9s separate players. And in some cases I've had it where I've been on a tier 8 tank, such as the Warrior, or AFV in that case, and there's been 3 tier 9s on the enemy team and there's only been tier 8s on our team, and the game's over before you even start because tier 9s are so dominating right now in the game. As you well know, if you've fought a T90 MS from the front and you can't see his lower plate, you're pretty much screwed. So there you go, really. Matchmaker 2.0 is certainly something which needs to be implemented as soon as possible in 10 days. This is recorded on February 1st, so patch 013 I believe is coming out on the 11th. Another advantage of the new Matchmaker 2.0 is class distribution, allowing the mechanism to be stricter with team composition, especially on higher tiers, in order to create as balanced setups as possible. Good. Good to hear. Geogen face will undergo improvements in the future. Developers will consider adding clock to the garage as well. Kind of seems a very minor change, but it's quite nice to keep track of time without tapping out the game, or perhaps looking at a watch in real life. Moving on to the last 3 or 4, more than that, doesn't matter. Developers are planning to add voice chat. Okay, very minor. Most people would use a TeamSpeak or Skype or something similar. There are plans for an improved kill cam feature. It will be implemented in the future. So, I suppose that's going down the sort of War Thunder route where it's like, this is where you were shot, this is where you were hit, and this is how you died. Maybe not as in depth as War Thunder, but if they do, it'd be quite nice to see what happened to your vehicle, because obviously right now it's similar to World of Tanks, where you get shot at and you get hit and you die and you're like, oh, there's the tank, but you don't know where exactly he hit you because you're dead, and your vehicle decal looks different compared to what a damaged vehicle would look like, because on damaged vehicles you can see where the shell penetrated, hit you on the side of the vehicle, or it hit you in the front lower plate. There's a little silver penetration mark, but when you're dead, it's just gone. You can't tell. You can assume where you're hit, but you can't physically tell. Sorry, no, hold on. The developers will introduce a special map, Tank Proving Grounds, where players will be able to test vehicle properties as well as armor inspect it in the garage. Very nice to see. Tank reviews, therefore, will be much better, because I'll be able to say the front lower plate is the obvious weak spot because it has 100mm of armor as opposed to 140mm of armor on the upper plate, something like that. And I imagine the tank inspector, in-game armor inspector, will be of interest to the majority of you. And also it will probably go into detail about this area is composite, and this area is not composite, and this area is covered in ERA, whereas this isn't. Something like that. Also, the tank proving grounds where players would be able to test the vehicle's properties, very good for me and other players who want to test their new vehicles. Crews in Armored Warfare are multinational. Introducing national voiceovers wouldn't make much sense. That's fair enough. It is not based on nationalities. This game is based on you being a PMC, private military corporation, and therefore you'll have people from all over the world in the in-game lore. You'll have American tankers, you'll have American drivers, or you'll have British drivers or whatever. You'll have Russian drivers, Chinese drivers, etc., etc., etc. So that's fair enough. Dynamic tank visuals from tanks getting dirty from mud or battle will be implemented as soon as possible to get this feature in. War Thunder has done this, and if you know what I'm on about, that's quite nice in terms of the aesthetic of playing the game. It is possible the developers will introduce a survival mode where players will fight against increasing numbers of enemies for special rewards. So this is a addition to the PvE, or an expansion of it, and this could be an interesting idea, especially because of the last two words there, special rewards. It's kind of an incentive for players to play PvE if they are solely PvP players. So yeah, I doubt they'll do a PvP mode where it's like 5 tanks on the hill versus 10 enemy players who can consistently respawn. That probably wouldn't be good. It'd probably be a PvE function. And lastly, the current T80 MBT will be replaced by another vehicle. Currently the T80 is actually a T80 prototype. It doesn't actually list this, but okay. It doesn't have any ERA or other features. The model will be completely replaced and additional protection will be added. Basically, the T80 right now is completely useless. When you're fighting something like a Challenger or maybe an M1 Abrams, it's outclassed by both of those vehicles. Its side armor is terrible, its rear armor is terrible, its lower plate is terrible, it has a good gun depression for a Soviet vehicle, that's about it. So, that was it for today. Community Spotlight or Community Highlight Part 9. I hope you enjoyed this video. It goes on for quite a while of me talking through all of these upcoming plans and features. And as always, I've been Geogen, and I'll see you chaps and chapettes in the next one.